Great to see you all here. My God, yes, a lot of you. You know what strikes me just in hearing everything today? The biggest cultural project of our time is actually the transition that we're just talking about, because it's about mindset, values, habits, attitudes, and most importantly, behavior, and that transformative effect that one needs to actually see opportunities in all of the things we've discussed. Because I think we all know that business as usual won't get us to where we need to be. We've already said that there are all the technologies and so out there, because our economic order and way of life, as we all know, is materially expansive, socially divisive, and environmentally hostile. And that's why I've got four great people here. Will they come? Where are they? Where is Bushra? I can't see you. Will Bushra come? Will Charles come? Will Mona, Imani, please come here? Where are they? Ah, there's one. Imani, please come up. Charles, hello, please come up. And where's Bushra? Hello, Mona. And Bushra somewhere, because I had breakfast with her this morning. So look, just to get things moving along, we'll wait for Bushra and someone will send the message out that she needs to be here. And I'll just start immediately. I'm looking at you, Mona. Okay, you're from Qatar. Tell me, let's say two very, very, very big pressures that you face as a city-state or as a city.
Well, since you started by stating that I am from Qatar, so I do believe that I need to touch base on the fact that we host the World Cup 2022. So it was one of the biggest pressures that we have witnessed as city makers or strategic urban planners to fulfill the requirements for the FIFA World Cup, and also to have a legacy that will help our generations that will come to embody such requirements that we had at the strategic level from the FIFA requirements, the tremendous amount of investment that we have done for such projects to really help our future master plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a big one. That is a big pressure that you've just talked about. Hello, Bushra. We love you. I know you're late, but it doesn't matter. Um, Charles, let me just hand over to you. Your job is vast. When I see that title, Director of Lands, Public Works, da 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 da, tell me some of those pressures, just two, just fire away, that really affect the cities.
The biggest pressure that currently we are facing is the upsurge of population of the youth that is moving from the rural areas to create new urban enclaves. And majority of these actually fall within the category of what we call the urban poor, in terms of skills, in terms of livelihoods development, in terms of their incomes. And so in Kenya, Kenya is leading the global community in terms of the building of climate resilience for the urban poor. What is happening is that within the 19th century and the 21st century, we have been creating cities in the world. But this narrative has currently changed. We are no longer creating cities in the world. We are currently creating the world in cities. It is important that as we create the world in cities, we create cities that are resilient, cities that are adapted to the current population that is moving into these cities, and cities that are eco-friendly, cities that are nature-based. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very clear. What about you, Amani? You tell me something. Not me. Tell the audience something.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to take forward what my colleagues were saying about, I come from South Asia, from Delhi in India. Air pollution, I will say, that is one of the biggest problem in my part of the world. I know that in other parts of the world also. I don't know how many of you know that 20 out of the most polluted cities in the world. Out of 100, 20 out of 100 most polluted cities in the world are from India. So that's one thing. And the city which I come from is used to be one of the most polluted, Delhi, in the world. But now we are looking at, we are in third or fourth or fifth. So that's another issue. The other pressure I'll say that I know that everybody is talking about climate change, mitigation, adaptation, all that, but also the waste. The solid waste generating out of these, out of that. He's just talking about people moving to the cities from rural areas. So the waste generated by these population is another thing on that. So these are the two maybe I will add. The last one maybe I will put for all these people. I think the previous session talking about more on the buildings. So all these people to live in cities, you need to create buildings for them. According to the statistics, whatever you have right now, I know we were talking about retrofitting and all those things, but you need to create maybe 3 times more than what we have right now, the buildings, to accommodate the people coming to the city government, to the cities. So air pollution, waste, buildings. I can add so many other things, but maybe I'll stop
We'll
here.
get to them very shortly. What about you, Bushra? I mean, obviously you're the heat officer for Dhaka, so somehow heat is a problem, but anything else you would like to say?
Um, so good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Absolutely, heat is, in my opinion, the most pressing threat, even though a lot of people maybe don't see it that way yet. But it does affect, it's starting to affect all the urban systems that Dhaka is made of, whether it's waste management, like you said, or whether it's the influx of a population. In fact, we are getting a lot of climate migrants. We have 2,000 people coming into our city every single day. And in a city with 15 million people already, with almost 900,000 people living in informal settlements, our resources are very overburdened, and there's lack of space, lack of resources, like I said. But there's also there's a huge sector of our population that is very vulnerable to through their income, through their level of education. A lot of people don't realize it, but women especially are the most vulnerable to heat stress. And women in our culture, in our society, especially women from lower income backgrounds, they're more vulnerable because they don't have the same access to solutions that others do. And in a lot of cases, they are facing the brunt. They are at the front lines of the communities, of their families, and really facing the brunt of extreme heat through power outages and taking care of their families, health-wise. In fact, the nexus of heat and health, like we are working on so much, but it's a very new conversation that we're having in their cities. And what I would really hope out of all of these events that I'm attending and out of all the conversations that we're having is that our national government really needs to recognize that heat is an extreme threat. It is a level of emergency, just like cyclones, just like other disasters, and it has to be treated in that way. There needs to be a lot of pushing from there, because Bangladesh is still a very centralized political system. So we really need to encourage that push, so that the cities are able, and especially like my city of Dhaka, is able to make the decisions it needs to protect its vulnerable people.
Yeah, at least you're a pioneer. The other pioneer is Freetown in Sierra
Yes,
Leone.
absolutely.
Eugenia is also a heat officer. So let's hope in a few years there'll be many more. What about heat in Qatar? Is that a threat there, or how are you dealing with it
Yeah,
in
definitely.
innovative ways?
It's a quite hot topic, actually, the heat and the climate change and the carbon emission. I do believe it's something that we all share, especially in Gulf countries, where we are more car dominant, let's say cities. And that's why we tried in our Qatar National Master Plan to adopt more of a holistic and integrated development approach that's more into transit oriented development and creating that shift from car dominance into more public transportation, also encouraging the pedestrian and what we call the green waste network. Um, because we can imagine if you totally rely on the car or let's say motorized kind of movement and the main dominant movement methods, you can imagine the amount of carbon emission for such things. So we do adopt such integrated and holistic approach to create more of a compact city that's really fulfilling the, let's say, the aspiration and vision to create livable cities, to create sustainable cities, to have inclusive cities and health cities.
Yeah. Just over to you, Charles, again. I remember, and I'm a bit old, I'm sorry about that. When I was born, there were 2.4 billion people, and we've just sort of hit 8 billion. I think that fact is an iconic fact. You doesn't need a big explanation that it has pressures and so on. Now, you're saying all these new people. Is there a debate about population growth in general in Kenya, for example? Because we know when women are more educated, population growth stabilizes in various countries and all of that, when women are empowered and so on. Is that a discussion that you're having in Kenya?
Population is a debate in Kenya, but not a debate to reduce the population. It's a debate to
Didn't mean it in a
stabilize.
dramatic way. I just meant, we constrain ourselves. That's what I mean.
Yes, it's a debate to stabilize the population. But take it this way, that there is a new phenomenon of movement from the rural to the urban areas.
Mm-hmm.
There is a new phenomenon of the urban areas moving to the rural areas. Two, because we have the small and secondary cities that are currently just bursting, within the rural areas, what we used to call small urban markets for rural trade and production are currently changing into bigger towns because of that movement. But this movement is causing vulnerability, and much more vulnerability to climate impact, because the people that are moving are not fitted with adequate skills to be able to withstand the shocks, of climate change impact. Two, these secondary cities and towns are not yet fitted with with the infrastructure that is resilient. And so we are having vulnerable cities. And this is why I said that what then the phenomenon we are seeing is to change the narrative from having cities that we are creating in the world to creating the world in the cities. In the sense that when we are creating cities in the world, what we saw is the destruction of our forests, destruction of our wetlands, destruction of the volatile ecosystem. That is all we did by creating cities within within the world. If you look at cities within the global south, no majority of those cities are actually sitting astride some water system, some either some aquifers or water towers. That one we are destroying. But now to create cities, the world in cities, we bring that and we try to do what now the Great Building Society is saying. We create microclimates within our cities. Let's have micro forests in our cities, micro wetlands that would then act as carbon sinks and be able to reduce the heat waves. These are the kind of approaches that now we are looking towards in order to ensure that our cities and communities are resilient. Build resilient livelihoods, build resilient social infrastructure, build resilient communities, and then you are able to create the world within the cities.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, quite often when you're thinking about transformation and change, it's concepts that often drive a change. So the way you've flipped that thing round, it sort of opens your mind. I mean, there's another dimension that occurred to me as you were talking. I don't know if it's true. Is also the bigger cities, the very, very big cities, are broadly unlivable in general, exceptions noted. And so there's also a move in other continents for the attractiveness of medium-sized cities. The definition of medium-sized obviously is a slippery definition, but it's not, medium-sized is not 10 million, let's put it like that. So I'm just saying that is a global movement, I believe. Amani, anything that's been said here, is it resonating? I hope we deal with the air pollution in Delhi, but that's a separate issue.
No, I just want to take it, I think, the discussion, what we actually, I come from a city network representing ICLI, as Mayor Sefiani was talking about in the previous sessions. So we are helping the city governments to come out with climate resilient city action plans. What we are telling them with a global protocol, unless until you know, as gentleman is saying, that unless until you know what is your emissions coming out, from where they're coming out, what are your vulnerable spots within the city. So unless until you check all these things, you cannot act on that.
Yeah.
So that's why we have, with all our partners, we have come out with tried and tested methodologies now to come out with the climate action plans for the city governments. In South Asia, we are almost working with 50, 60 cities. I know that's not a number to talk about when compared
It's
to
enough. It's more than one.
more than one. We are also even working with Dhaka city, helping them to come out with this climate action plan, so that cities, city mayors, city officials, citizens know that this is what we are causing the problem. This is what we have these vulnerable issues, and how to address them on that. So that's one thing which, as a network, we are helping. Mayor Sefiani was also talking about that in the morning. Like, we helped them with the city, with other cities in the world. But this is one thing only. What I'm saying, that the other thing which I think the previous session is also talked about is the financing. Actually, most of the cities in the southern part of the world, they need money. Frankly speaking, it's not that northern cities don't need money, but the southern cities, they have a lot of issues, financial issues, unless until, because their money, whatever they have right now, they're just investing on their basic parameters, water, waste, transport, or buildings, or all those things. So we need the cities in the southern part needs financial resources. I know that northern cities are responding to that, but there is a long way to reach to that. So how can we make sure the finances available along with these action plans, so that we can move together along with the northern cities in a better livable way? I think that's what I'll suggest here. I'll talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Bushra, we had a brief chat, and we had a lovely little brief chat about bureaucracy. And I was telling you about my creative bureaucracy project. I mean, you were saying that a lot of the issues you have are actually to do with the public administration, certain forms of regulation, which is too heavy. There are a lot of activists. I know you're official now, but you were probably an activist before, who are struggling to sort of get things through, and there are blockages there. Are there any comments you'd like to make about that question of regulation, incentives, and so on?
Yes, sure. So as we were discussing this morning, I think there are a lot of roadblocks that come from the political systems that we work in, the systems of governance, which aren't always efficient or good, or inclusive. And a lot of the times, different governing authorities that directly have an effect on the public health, they don't talk to each other, which negatively impacts the public, and especially the most vulnerable people. There's a really it's changing now, but the changes are very recent. So the damages have been happening for a while, and the lack of data sharing, keeping your data in silos among different departments of the government, or not having a digital database where people can go and reference and these things have made things very slow. And in a city like Dhaka, which is moving really, really fast, it makes things very challenging. But I would just like to say about funding, I mean, that is a real challenge. And we also sometimes don't have the legal framework to spend where we need to, which is where, that's where public-private partnerships can really come into effect. One of the things that I'm doing right now is creating, as you said, and we're having to create microforests. In fact, one of the locations that I'm creating an urban forest is where, when I was growing up, there actually used to be a forest there. It was right next to one of the main roads. And I always remember when I was a child, it was a very long stretch. It was 1,800 feet of forest and very large trees, full of canopy, full of birds. And right now, it's just like barren. So we are trying to see if the soil there is fit enough, or do we need to redo the entire area to create a forest there all over again? Because the temperatures in the houses right next to that barren piece of land now, it's just so hot. And the air pollution, like you said, is just terrifying for the children who live there. Every single child in Dhaka is currently on a nebulizer, my daughter included. Everyone has asthma, everyone has respiratory problems, and the heat just makes it worse. So I think all of these problems that is being faced by Nairobi, by Delhi, by Qatar, every single, I feel like people, as citizens who live in this region, they're so vulnerable. And if we don't take initiative, if we don't start these conversations with different actors and stakeholders within our governance structure, within our community, then we won't get very far.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good the way you've sort of really focused on heat and health. You know, we can remember that. I mean, just thinking about this sort of thinking in an integrated way. Mona, would you say that in Qatar, you know, there's sort of integrated thinking, planning, and acting beyond silos? I mean, obviously, partly what we're talking about is how do you break down silos and 1+1 = 3, ideally, or in solving a problem.
Yeah, definitely, because I do believe all the issues that we are tackling now, whether it's related to the climate change, related to heat, related to the sustainability, related to city inclusiveness, related to the making our cities more livable and more healthy, it's quite complex and subtle kind of challenges. And I do believe complex and subtle challenges can only have complex and subtle solutions. And that's why we need really to have a sort of national-wide integrated development framework. And this is supposed to be cross-cutting all the development sector, because it doesn't matter which development sector that you are dealing with, it has impacts in different forms and ways to the other development sector. So by having such an overarching and comprehensive development framework that is cross-cutting all of such aspects or sectors, we will be better prepared to really shape our cities and shape our districts and neighborhoods and all the planning sectors that we are dealing with in a way that really can fulfill our aspirations to have more sustainable, to control the climate change and create livable and healthy cities to our countries. And I do believe the approach that Qatar adopted for the Qatar National Development Framework really take this into consideration. And also the fact that we are working across several planning levels, from national level to city level to district level to even neighborhoods and just local kind of planning levels. So the synergies across all of such planning levels needs also to be taken into consideration. And it's only by having a sort of comprehensive integrated framework is the answer to such subtle and complex kind of issues. And speaking about also the challenges when it comes to the implementation, even when it comes to the implementation, you need to have a sort of national strategy for the way you want to implement all of such, different, diverse kind of plans and aspiration. And it will tackle things related to the financial aspects, related to the phasing of the implementation, how we can bring all the let's say the stakeholders and different interested parties into really to the momentum, onto the flow that we can implement whatever we have already established in such comprehensive framework.
Thanks for
And
that.
speaking about health cities.
Oh, yeah, no worries, yeah.
Just one more thing to add, because creating health cities or really caring about the health agenda is not limited only to how many hospitals and how many,
Yeah.
health centers or the pollution and how to mitigate it. It has a lot to do with the way that we form our cities. And I'm proudly to say that Qatar was the only and the first country in the Eastern Mediterranean region and also the Middle East that already got the accreditation for health city from WHO for all of its municipalities. And I went through this journey with representatives from WHO. It's more about creating a holistic policy framework to make the city in a way that is really healthy, which is also tackling all the development sector. It's not limited to the health sector, again, which is mainly how many hospitals or healthcare that you provide to the community, but how to make the people lifestyles already healthy by creating active and livable cities.
Yeah, no, I think you've raised a really interesting point with the WHO. There was a lovely project a while back, and a guy who happens to live around the corner from me, he just invented a word. He added a word to urban planning, healthy urban planning. And the whole thing that he was talking about, cities that make you ill versus cities that make you healthy. And you raised that quite interestingly. And what comes out there is also aesthetic questions. What does it feel like emotionally as I'm navigating this city? Charles, can I jump over back to you? You operate in a vast country, et cetera, and Mona was talking about the links between the state and the city and all of that. The relationship between your government and the cities, is that good, or is that too simplistic a question? Probably is, but you know what I mean. I mean, is it working well? Is there a sort of exchange of information, co-learning? I mean, what we in general say, the whole movements at the global level is really cities are the laboratories for solving the problems of their own creation, and therefore often the leaders and pioneers. But I wonder if you could comment a bit on that.
Okay, thank you very much. There is quite some good relationship, I would say.
Uh-huh.
In the sense that within the Kenyan constitution, the issue of city development and city management has been moved from the national government level to the subnational government level. So issues of cities development, cities planning, that has now become a local level matter, because then issues of affordable housing, issues of climate resilience, issues of livelihoods can better be dealt with at the local level rather than planning at the micro-national level. Now, the thing that we are doing is a recognition that when we are talking about the urban pressures, we are talking about new urbanism. If we look at it from that perspective, then we solve the problem of the urban development and urban movement in the whole globe. And I would want to add very quickly that when we talk about new urbanism, we are talking about an urban framework, an urban phenomenon that has caught up and is coming up within the global south that is slightly different from the way urbanization took place in the global north. So we need to look at it very clearly. And in the new urbanism, we are looking not at the hard infrastructure or the hard part, of urbanization, but you begin from the soft side of urbanization, the social dimensions, of urbanization. That is where you can now bring in issues of health, you can bring issues of economy, you can, resilient health, resilient economy, resilient social infrastructure, resilient communities. You begin from there rather than waiting. But the biggest problem is that in terms of resources, the global south can only be able to plan after the fact. That is the difference that we had in the global north.
Yeah.
Right? So forward planning is something that is a big challenge and a pressure, for the global south. Now, this is why we need to be very clear about resource mobilization to be able to plan before the fact and ensure that the community is at the core of that planning. So we are not, when we are doing our spatial plans, we are not looking at how our roads should be laid, you know, where our buildings should be and so forth. First of all, we want to see where the communities will live, what kind of communities, you know, are going to occupy this place, what is going to be their livelihoods, what are the challenges that they are moving with from the, you know, from the rural areas now to the cities. Can we be able to project that and take care of that before those communities land, you know, in this space called the urban area? That is why moving in Kenya, moving the urban dimensions from the national level government to the subnational level government makes sense. Thank you.
No, I think you raised two questions there, which I really like. One, our colleague there, our Kenyan colleague, mentioned the informal settlements, which is, of course, a vast issue across the region. But the other thing you mentioned is the soft. I'm so glad you mentioned the soft, because one thing about the soft is the hard. The soft is really hard, because the hard you can often measure. The soft, social bonding, what is the easy measure of the soft? Anyway, we can have a long discussion about it. But anyway, my slogan for the day, the soft is the hard. Over to you, Imani. I've got a question, though. I know you want to respond. You can do what you like. But my question is, how do you persuade the unpersuaded? You must be dealing with people who don't believe what you're talking about, or who have got a blind, who are, you know, deliberately blind. How do you do that? But also say whatever else you wanted to say.
No, I don't completely agree with that
Good.
that point. But two things I think to just take forward the discussion my Kenyan colleague is talking about is obviously multi-level action is the main thing. Even the COP28 talked about that previously. We were talking about that on that. Unless until you bring national, provincial, and city level governments and multi-level action at all levels, we need to act on that. So that's the message came up from the COP28 or the previous COPs. What we are talking about as an ICLEI, as a city association for so many years, actually. I think I'm happy now the national governments are recognizing that and taking it forward on that. Because you need to act at the local level. You need to bring actions at the local level. To implement any action or you want to see any result, you have to do that thing. So that's the first point on that. The second point, coming to you, to your question, is that I think partly he was answered. You need to involve the public. You need to involve the people if you want to implement anything on that. A simple example, I just want to bring that from my country, from India. A few years back, 5 or 6 years back, when Government of India started looking at the Smart Cities program, when they implemented in 109 cities in India, they have said that we don't want to say what you need to do, what each city needs to do, but bring cities, bring citizens into your discussions, see what exactly they need. Yes, you need, maybe you have a wish list to implement, but prioritize those implementation, prioritize those wish lists, say that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 things which we need to do that, and then look for bringing money to implement those projects on that. So citizen participation, I think, is the main thing to achieve whatever you want to. Unless until you do that, it's not going to happen on that. And my last point is on that, we tested a platform called Ru-Urban platform, rural and urban platform, bringing both the rural areas, because there are no simple city boundaries. You can say that water will happen here on that. So this is another idea which I just want to add on that.
Thank you very much. I mean, we've sort of broadly run out of time. A horrible thing. That funny zero is flashing. Can you see it? It's going woof, woof. That is barking at us. Anyway, look, one of the key things we wanted to leave with messages, and I think you've given messages, you know, one of them is citizens' participation, start with people first. You're saying, see things that you perhaps didn't take seriously before, that heat is spreading everywhere, and thank God there's you and Eugenia as a starting point. What else can I say?
I think they turned off our mic. Oh no, maybe just yours. Maybe just yours.
What do I do? Do they turn off my mic?
No.
They turned off my mic.
You turned it yourself.
Okay. Okay. what I'm about to say is thank you to all these wonderful people. Okay, so that's Bushra, Charles, Mona, and Imani. Speak to them in the next break, wherever they're available, I think, aren't you? You're available for everybody. So thank you very much for listening.